Game begin.
Hello and welcome back to the Spy Colony podcast, the one and only podcast featuring such co-hosts as Michael J. Flores, noted defeater of the Mono Blue Dreadnought deck, not once, not twice, not even 3 times, but 4 times in a row.
The fourth one was an avenging of my last 4-0 against Dave Kaplan.
Doing the impossible and finishing that feat by doing an even less possible feat, losing to elves
2-0, lost to elves 2-0. Yeah,
with Replenish. The internet has low-key lost its mind.
I wish I had won. You know, Spencer got me. Spencer had so much plot armor, Lanny. First of all, it was his place. You're playing at his place, right? So he had home court advantage in the most literal sense. And I think he had it in for me, right? Like, he was making comments all night. He's just like, this is a good deck unless somebody draws all 4 pernicious deeds. I had drawn all 4 pernicious deeds against him apparently when I beat him in the top 8 at LobsterCon 2 years ago. And I beat Spencer in the top 8 on the way to losing to D-Tau in the finals of the Saturday tournament. And then most importantly, in the plot armor race, Spencer took down SWB. So, I mean, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And he did that. So kudos to him, deserving champion. Although, obviously, the Spy Colony wishes that Michael J. Remember when I used to win like a lot of meetups? Now
No, you
I've
won't let us forget.
Just,
of course I remember.
I'm just like X1 Flores every single time.
Yeah, well, meetups have gotten substantially harder since the olden days. So let's dig into it. You played Replenish, and you had a specially technologized list per the hest of one Osip Levidovich, who backed out. And so you're left with this Replenish deck. What is in this Replenish deck?
So Osip had made a comment on my Instagram when I posted Mengu's deck. And he's like, oh, I totally want to play that. I'm like, oh, you want to play it at the next meetup? And he's like, yeah. So then a few days later, I posted Rich's deck, and I asked him, would you rather play this version, right? So which one do you want to play? And he said he liked Mengu's version better. But then he texted me with a bunch of changes, and just like Sabo's Web doesn't make any sense to me. Like they both have 3 Sabo's Web. Mengu has them in the main, Rich has them in the sideboard. I just don't want to play it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I thought that cutting the Sabo's Webs made the deck a little land light. Obviously, Rich has 2 more City of Traders in his main deck. Mengu has 3 Sabo's Web in his main deck, which is like 1.5 extra lands. So I just played the 24 lands. I did declare more mulligans than I usually do. I usually declare 0 mulligans, but I declared a fair number of mulligans with my 24 land deck. The main difference is they're kind of married. So in the Sabo's Webs slots in the main deck, I had Mana Leak. So if you're just playing against the deck, you might think you're playing against Rich's version. Then after sideboarding, I have essentially Mengu's sideboard with abeyances, right? So you don't need Arcane Denial. Well, first of all, Arcane Denial is poop, but you really don't need Arcane Denial if you have the main deck Mana Leaks. So especially against Dreadnought, Lanny, I had so much resistance. I had Seal, Parallax Wave, Swords to Plowshares, and Mana Leak in the main deck. Then after sideboard, I brought in both Abeyance and Meddling Mage. So I lost 3 of the 4 game ones to Dreadnought. And I felt like I should have won one. Like one against Ritz. I played a second turn Seal of Cleansing. And then I replenished back Seal of Cleansing with a soul land. He had a stifle for it, and in the process of replenishing back my Seal of Cleansing, I brought back 3 attunements, and so I attuned 3 times in response to his stifle. So that's like 9 cards. Not drawing 9 cards, let's say filtering 9 cards. So I had 4 Swords to Plowshares and 3 Mana Leaks in my deck at that point, but none of them came up because of because attunement isn't very good, and so I lost that one. And then I won the sideboard of games again, Meddling Mage and Abeyance both in the deck. And then the only person I 2-0'd Itai Kurtzman, a former LobsterCon finalist with Dreadnought. So that was a cheat. I loaned Itai his deck. He is my grandson. So I knew he didn't have Parallax Tide, so I didn't have to play around Parallax Tide. So that was very good.
And did you see any Parallax Tide from Ritz?
Ritz, I believe Ritz, Kaplan, and Luis all had Parallax Tide.
Incorrect. Kaplan did not.
Oh, Kaplan did not. Oh, I played like he did. But
did you see any? So Ritz cast some against you?
I believe Ritz and Luis both cast.
Yeah, I know Luis had it because so. Luis consulted me on the list.
Yeah, he had the 2/2.
He had 2. Yeah. I just went with 2 on everything because you have cantrip, so that's like having 3 of everything. So basically, what we're looking at here then is just like 4 Plow, 3 Seal, 3 Mana Leak, 4 Attunement, 3 Frantic Search, 3 Intuition, 4 Tide, Wave, Opal, Replenish, and then 24 lands. And then what you're doing, 4 Angel sideboard, 4 Meddling Mage sideboard, 2 Warmth, 3 Blast, and 2 Abeyance.
Yeah, so I'm going to play the same deck again on Thursday, I think. So I haven't posted the deck yet because I want to maintain whatever tiny edge I can. Of course, we're talking about this on the podcast, so that's going to be evaporated as soon as that happens. But I think I'm going to cut 2 attunements because attunement sucks. I sided 3 or more attunements out every... I mean, it's silly to say that, right? I played against...
You played against one deck. You're like, oh my god, they keep going out.
I sided all 4 attunements out against Spencer. Again, on a battle of 3 drops, I'd just rather have Exalted Angel there. Attunement sucks. So I would play only 2 attunement, which is, obviously both Mengu and Rich play 4, but then I'd play like the 4th Frantic Search and the 4th Intuition. That seems so much better to me, right? Like just having Intuition in my hand, I felt like I could never lose.
Yeah, I have been saying this ad nauseum since I started playing Replenish. It's like very evident to me that the 2-card combo in Replenish is Intuition and Replenish. So playing 3 Intuition is like playing 3 Siege Gang Commander when you really want to have one in your hand when you connect with Goblin Lackey.
If you're playing against elves, right, like you don't even need the full combo. All you need is any combination of Parallax Wave and Opalescence for any amount of time. Like even if they have some sort of way to interact with you, you generate such an absurd advantage that like it's insurmountable essentially. So like you don't even need the full combo there. Spencer, I was saying it because the dealer had me when I beat Spencer back in Boston 2 years ago. But man, did the dealer have Spencer? He juked me real good in our game 1 where he baited me with Survival of the Fittest. I blew it up with the Seal of Cleansing that I had played, and then he just tangle wired me, and it made my follow up kind of awkward. And then against
at which point you're really cursing only have three Frantic Search instead of 4.
Oh yeah. And then in the second game, I had like a really good line, and he's deliberating over his play. I mean, these games could take time, but like the games are like done in 4 turns, right? Like one of us is gonna take an enormous number of actions in a turn, and he's just deliberating about what he's gonna do in his 4th turn, and I'm like, second Tangle Wire would be pro here. He's like, all right, then I'll play it. And I think he was like thinking about which line. And, if he didn't play the second Tangle Wire, I think he probably didn't realize that I had him.
You just let him into the correct play.
Yeah. And then he says me, so I'm like, I'm pinned. And, we discussed plays afterwards. Andy says I should have just let him have the Tangle Wires because the Tangle Wires were also slowing him down. I should have taken out his Survival instead. But in my head, I'm like, all I have to do is take out Tangle Wire and I'm going to combo off on him. But it was just, I made a small mistake. I don't know that the mistake cost me the game because I think Spencer would have just done something else. I left an Ancient Tomb untapped, so when I cast my Parallax Wave, I had to take 2. That put me at exactly the amount of damage he could do, and so my Exalted Angel didn't save me, right? Because he doesn't have lifelink. She doesn't have lifelink. she has a triggered ability, and so I was just like, I died to Xaxes, but we talked that out through. He's like, I just would have done something different than just attack with these creatures in play, and so anyway, yeah, I did the impossible, and then I failed on the eminently possible.
So you just did the impossible 5 times.
Yeah, so but like I said, he had all the plot armor. Dealer had him, and he beat SWB. Come on, Lanny, you beat the man. You be the man.
Yeah,
that's how it is.
Fair enough. So the arc on Replenish versus Dreadnought is pretty important to talk about. That effectively flashback all the way to 2023, before many notable Replenish players had even picked up the deck. This was the time where it was like myself and Anton and Fluffy playing the deck. Maybe some others who were to come out of the woodwork later, but we were maybe the people that talked about the deck the most. And during that time, I still hated attunement, and everyone else still loved attunement, but I'm going to set that aside for a second.
How many attunements did I play when I top 8'd with it? I think I probably played 3.
Yeah, I know. We'd have to dig that up, huh?
I
know that you played very random numbers of various things, including but not limited to 3 opalescents, which I actually go back and forth on. But I still think that in many ways, the Replenish list that just ran 4 of everything was like pretty close to where I would, maybe it's come full circle. Maybe
I played 4 attunement, Lanny.
Yeah. There
I was
go.
random AF, but I guess I was in the 4 attunement club.
So
23 lands? My God!
You had careful study, so
I did.
So you used careful study to draw into your lands at the cost of course, a card. In any case,
but in another way, I was not a cost of a card because I was just getting back squeeze.
Yeah, that's true. There was a little bit. There was a lot going on there, but it was at this time that there was like. I thought that it was like a pretty primitive natured, thought that it was just like, oh, like Replenish doesn't beat Dreadnought. Dreadnought has counterspells. And I was like, well, this is actually ridiculous. Like you start with, at the time, the main deck would have 4 Plowshares, 3 Seal Cleansing, 4 Parallax Wave. And then obviously if you ever establish Opal Wave, the Dreadnought player was locked out because there's nothing that mono blue decks typically had at the time that could interact favorably with Opal Wave. And this reflected in my play, especially after sideboard. You just add in all the Abeyance Orms Chant type nonsense. I did have
4 Abeyance at that Lobster Con.
Yeah.
I was an early Abeyer.
I had a Magic Online opponent just like, just be like, what am I going to do? Like, I cast a after I answered their like 3rd Dreadnought, they were just like, whatever. And the best part about that was that because my sideboard was so good, I just didn't need to win the game. I just could focus on not losing. And, during that time, it was it was when I kind of established, at least for myself and the way that I talked about the matchup, which was like Replenish is never going to lose to Mono Blue Dreadnought. This was before you saw a lot of brain freeze. It was surely before Mishra's Factory Parallax Tide. And so, as a result, I was like, people should be playing Blue-White Dreadnought, because Blue-White Dreadnought, just the addition of Meddling Mage meant that you could just Meddling Mage one of the things that mattered. It could be Swords of Plowshares, it could be Parallax Wave, or it could be Replenish itself.
It can be Opalescence, and then you fight them on the
well, then you have to counter all the then you'd have to counter all the Parallax waves and Swords of Plowshares. So you still made it about removal. But it just didn't matter because you just had 2 power in play, and your opponent had a deck that generated no card advantage and generated repeated card disadvantage and was not mana efficient. So they'd cast their one thing a turn, and your dazes would still be online, stuff like that.
But some geniuses had Thawing Glaciers back then. I will.
Notwithstanding. So no other person that I've ever met besides you, and I've actually never played against you, nor have you played against anyone with that Thawing Glaciers deck, cast LobsterCon in the PSS. So that's a completely irrelevant point. But regardless,
I'm just saying some geniuses had Thumb Blazers,
regardless,
and it was fantacular.
The Meddling Mage blue-white version was quite good against Replenish because Meddling Mage could deal 20 damage on its own. And that was, typically all it took. So that was kind of the arc going into 2023. Itai with his blue-white Dreadnought deck defeated Replenish multiple times. It wasn't easy.
So many Replenish guys. It was funny because he didn't know the names of any of the cards or what his opponent's decks did, but he just soloed them with Dreadnought over.
Yeah,
and over
I mean,
again.
I coached him. I coached him on the deck, and I was just like, it's tricky, but it's still, whatever. And so then flash forward to LobsterCon this year, where effectively
last year, 2020.
Last year, the most recent LobsterCon in 2024, the operating assumption was, basically the same. I thought it was the same. Replenish was just going to beat Mono Blue Dreadnought, and it was going to be a little bit behind Blue White Dreadnought. And one of the big things that Mono Blue Dreadnought pilots did not do in the before time was run 2 copies of Flash of Insight instead of 1, which is substantial for inevitability, and 2, not spend any resources on countering removal from the Replenish opponent. So
I would talk to Kaplan's just like the Replenish deck is like a 52 card deck. He's just like, you should just never counter half these cards. He's just like, who cares if they have an attunement? He's just like, who cares if they have an unpaired Parallax Wave? Like if they just cast a Parallax Wave, wait them out, let it die.
Yeah, it just says nothing. Yeah, literally the only cards that do anything are Replenish and Opalescence, and Replenish if Opalescence is in the graveyard, and in some circumstances, Parallax Tide, which if they're playing Parallax Tide, they have to have the Seal of Cleansing in play. The Seal of Cleansing in play, and the Stifle Knot player is capable.
Stuff can still go wrong. They
just stifle the Seal Cleansing, and this is why it's important. If you are using Stifles on Dreadnoughts, then you don't have them for Seal Cleansing or even for nominal value for Flooded Strand. And so if you just eliminate that mistake from your game, which is just be like, okay, just don't cast Dreadnought, just like don't even bother casting it. Like, you can have triple protection. They might just have triple answer, and then you'll have spent all your, important resources. Vision Charm being extremely valuable for milling. Stifle, as I mentioned, you can stifle the Seal Cleansing to stop Tide combo. And, again, nominally hitting a Flooded Strand is just better than stifling a Dreadnought. So just hand size your Dreadnoughts. Flash of Insight through your entire deck, stack your deck, and then
it's a discipline thing. I won about half. Well, I mean, I won about half my games on merit, right? So like my plan executed better than their plan, right? Then I won about of the remaining half the games that I won about maybe 40% with unanswered Meddling Mage, where like I just fought over stuff, and then they were in the rebuild phase. I landed a Meddling Mage, and the Meddling Mage was enough to win the game.
Yeah, I mean that's like a form of merit too, which is just like if you have it in your deck and your opponent doesn't know that they have to have Powder Keg in the sideboard games.
Yeah,
like that becomes like really important.
So like in my deciding game against Ritz, I played a first turn Skycloud Expanse and a second turn Ancient Tomb, and then I just tombed out the mage, and so you couldn't daze it, and then it went all the way, right? Like that was the whole game. And then the other maybe 60% of the games I won with my opponents taking action when they should have just sat.
Right. Yeah.
And Kaplan was just like, I should have just been hand sizing. Right?
Yeah.
He's like, if I hadn't gone for it.
Kaplan showed up with an arm tied behind his back. He didn't have tides. He didn't have Mistress Factory, and then I don't even think he had card advantage. Like I don't think he had the AKs. He had just Merchant Scroll. He's a big Merchant Scroll believer.
He had Phyrexian Furnace, which was like I'm going to put this in air quotes. Hopefully people understand what I'm saying. It like put me on the clock, right? Like the fact that it was there made me alter my game plan, right? And he played it in both of the sideboarded games that we had played. like it game one, Kaplan just won the roll and then comboed me on turn 2 and had triple protection. Like my draw was literally swords, soul land, parallax wave, and he won. Right? So that was sucky, right? You think like the second swords is probably going to be enough, and then when he already had Daze Foil, and then I'm like, all right, Ancient Tomb wave, still got a Daze, right? And it was just it. But then, he said if he had just sat, he thinks he would have won. The problem was I kept hitting my land drops, and he just, he's just not even tapping his Phyrexian Furnace because I'm not playing anything to the graveyard, right? So it's just doing nothing. And so then he takes an action, and I just had interactive spells, and I got to my turn at like 6 land in play or something, and I'm like, Opal Wave.
Yeah, I think Kaplan's list also might have had 17 lands, because if you don't have Mistress Factory, they were like, okay, well, now you can run 17 islands. I mean, these are all things that I just, think hurt the Replenish matchup specifically.
And I mean, I had the Abeyance lead in a bunch of times. Like when I cast Abeyance against Itai in one turn, he's just like, that means I can't cast any spells. And I'm like, it means you can't do anything. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you can't activate that Mistress Factory and block my Meddling Mage. And he's like, oh shoot, and because the Meddling Mage is going to kill him if he can't activate the Mistress Factory, right? And so we then, that was a fight that was initiated, and I'm in the driver's seat now, right? I don't have to do anything. I could just Mind Twist him, right? And that was my only 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's, if you have Abeyance and Meddling Mage and Exalted Angel post board against Dreadnought, you're going to be presenting a much more powerful version of Replenish than people typically would see, because you tend to see one or the other. Meddling Mage is especially one of the cards in the sideboard of Replenish that I like the least. You don't really have anything. It was anything great
for me.
You play against Dreadnought 4 times in a row. It seems pretty good.
I thought you meant in the Dreadnought matchup.
No, it's just like,
I'm indifferent.
I don't think it belongs in the Replenish sideboard.
I'm totally indifferent. I wasn't taking a stand on that.
Yeah.
I misunderstood you.
Yeah.
I was just like, it seemed really good.
No. It's good against Dreadnought. It's one of the cards that he would want against Dreadnought. Like the deck added Meddling Mage deck added Mistress Factory specifically to answer Meddling Mage. Not to mention Powder Keg and Chain of Vapor being important there. And but I think that if you were to sleeve up Replenish for LobsterCon, like that, you shouldn't play Meddling Mage. That like sideboard space is very valuable. Meddling Mage doesn't really help you against Terrageddon.
What cards do you like? That's actually what I'd ask you. Like I'm looking at lists and I'm like, I don't know. Like maybe I hate Attunement so much, I'm just going to play multiple main deck Abeyances. That's not crazier than Rich playing main deck Stifle, in my opinion. Right, Rich has got like 3 Parallax Waves and a Stifle.
So I think it's very interesting to play Stifle. I used to be relatively anti-Stifle. I was just kind of like, whatever. But if we live in a world that we're going to not play Attunement, and we're going to play some form of other card selection spell, maybe it's Impulse. Maybe you just go crazy and you play Fact or Fiction.
I like Impulse Fact or Fiction, but we had this discussion not on the podcast. The problem is you have 16 other 4s, right? Like just adding more 4s seems
it's
a really good way to have your hand jammed up.
It's not ideal. I mean, I like maybe starting with Impulse. I have a video on my YouTube where I played with Impulse and it was totally fine.
I've watched that video. It seems fine. It doesn't seem better to me than Attunement, right? Like Impulse is just the least exciting card in pre-modern to me. It's just fine.
Yeah.
I mean, like, Attunement is kind of poopy, but it's poopy in part because it costs 3 and you're tapped out in your main phase. It has a good, if somebody asked you if you could start with an Attunement in play or not, like, of course you would opt to have the Attunement in play. Right, like it's not like a horrible.
Actually,
effect.
every Magic player starts with an Attunement in play, and it's called the Mulligan phase. And you can elect to spin your Attunement multiple times if you want before the game begins.
This is
wild how that works.
Shout out to Mash Legs. I strategic mulligan twice in the meetup. By means strategic mulligan, I had hands with lands and spells, but I just didn't like my early game action in the Dreadnought matchups, so I shipped those hands and I won both of those games. Yeah, I just didn't have a seal. Like, you know, if you don't have a seal, swords, or meddling mage, or an abeyance, right? Like, you're kind of asking for it.
Yeah, I mean, impulse or portent, it's kind of good there. It means that you can trim down on lands. You can hit more land drops if you have to hit more land drops.
That's the thing about Sabo's Web. It's free, you know? Like,
well, so Sabo's Web, like, you know, the adage of adding 2 cantrips to remove a land is not actually mathematically precise. If you crunch the numbers like a little bit harder, it kind of comes out to like adding 2 cantrips lets you trim like 72% of a land or something like that.
That's not the adage. If people think that adding 2 cantrips lets you remove a land, that's not what Comer ever said. Comer said adding 4 cantrips lets you remove 2 land.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
So to be fair, those are different, right? Because 4 cantrips is a much more compressed deck than 2 cantrips.
Regardless, that's a little fuzzy, and I don't think your experience is going to bear out to that. Especially when they're
my experience is. I'm just saying what Comer.
Especially,
said.
I'm not. This isn't a contest. I'm literally just telling you that regardless, like non-selective cantrips are not a good way to hit land drops, unless the cantrip, of course, is Lonely Sandbar. But
yes, there's a substantial searching difference between a Sabo's Web and an Impulse. I will remind all the listeners that I once cut the Impulses from Dreadnought to play main deck Sabo's Web, and those Sabo's Web spent all their time in the sideboard the entire tournament. So,
I don't recommend using Sabo's Web as like a crutch, because like you're also going to be in a spot where like you're on the play, you have 2 lands and a Sabo's Web and a bunch of 4 mana spells. It's like that's not going to feel great. Like, I mean, you're going to miss like a pretty reasonable amount of the time.
That depends on the matchup, and it depends on a lot of things, but you know me, never mulligan.
Yeah, that one redraw is not going to look that good. And
if your hand's all 4 drops, so 1 redraw is probably not enough. So.
Yeah. 4 looks probably is though, on the other hand, and that's kind of the margin that we're talking about. But regardless,
that just gets you to 3 lands. Doesn't mean your hand is actually operable.
Regardless, the question is just like, what do I like? I was like, okay, I like Impulse enough. I think Impulse will get the job done close enough. I like the 4th Intuition. I like the 4th Frantic Search. I like Mana Leak enough, and I like Stifle more than I like Seal Cleansing.
Sideboard cards, because you said that Meddling Mage is taking up valuable sideboard space. That's actually what I'm interested in.
Yeah, so I like Exalted Angel. I am okay with Sphere of Law. My Replenish.
Is it the thinking that like they're gonna punch through a Sphere of Law?
So that's what I've been told. Rich said that to me, right? Rich was like, they're going to cast Price of Progress, and it's going to deal more damage than your Sphere of Law can handle. And I thought that was interesting. And then I was just like, okay, whatever. Like I was playing Burn, and my Replenish opponent Intuition for 3 chills, and then replenished 2 chills, and then cast the 3rd one, which I thought was an interesting move. But my only reasoning behind
sounds horrible.
Well, it was bad once they cast Opalescence and allowed me to curse scroll one of the chills. So it didn't work out for them in that particular instance. And, you know, knowing my hand, I was just like, okay, well, I think it would have just been better to Intuition for 1 of each, cast Parallax or cast Replenish for the Parallax Tide, and then complete the combo like you should. Like,
just the half combo is fine.
I guess I want to like rewind and like, this is very obvious to me, and this is how I play Replenish, but this is how I play Replenish. On turn 2 or 3, I cast Intuition, and I get Parallax Wave, Parallax Tide, and Opalescence. My opponent puts the Opalescence into my hand, and then on turn 3 or 4, I cast Replenish and put Parallax Tide and Parallax Wave into play. Then I remove up to 4 lands with, it's turn 3 or 4. So I move up to 4 lands with Parallax Tide, and then I pass the turn. My opponent plays the land, maybe, does nothing, maybe, and passes the turn back to me. Then I cast Opalescence, and then I have all 3 permanents in play, and et cetera, et cetera. They have no nothing ever. So, I guess I just need to like remind people of that, and that's like why intuition is good. Like I don't know why you would want less.
You can't just really lose casting that card. It's
like, and then people are like, you're just like taking those spells out of your deck, and then you're putting them into your graveyard. And like, it just doesn't really line up for me where I'm just like that, like, yeah, but that's
Lanny, but what if you had a Frantic Search in your hand? Then they would just be both.
Then they would just be dead.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing.
But the thing is, the important thing is you don't actually have to have the Frantic Search in your hand. Like the combo is so good that you don't have to have the Frantic Search in your hand. So I could actually say it's like, okay, well, what if we just played 12 cantrips and we played 3 of all the enchantments and we just use intuition to get enchantments around, and like, that's where things get interesting. So if I wanted to imagine a Replenish deck that just like played Xerox instead of looting, because
Rich, you were a genius who had Careful Study ×4 in your Replenish deck.
No, that's the same thing. That's the same thing as
I heard that there was a genius who once did that.
I think you had 2, but if you had 4, that's crazy.
He had 4.
It's actually ridiculous. Okay.
I'm looking at his deck list.
Okay.
He was not just a genius. I believe he was a former resident genius of the Magic the Gathering Invitational.
Regardless, Careful Study isn't exactly Xerox. I'm talking like Portent Impulse, and then things get more interesting. That lets you run the Stifle, so that like you can select, like card selection is important there. You have the Stifle, so if you like draw a Stifle, you can be like, okay, I have a Stifle, I'm gonna cantrip into my Parallax Tide, or vice versa, or I'm just gonna go with the main thing, which is I've got 4 intuition, I got 4 replenish. Let's just try to draw intuition and replenish, and that should be our goal. And do whatever we want to get there. It's like in that world, Frantic Search isn't even that exciting. Maybe you want to run 1 or 2, so that like same thing, you can use Xerox to sort of demonic consult your way into the intuition plus replenish plus Frantic Search or combo. But like again, you really just need intuition to replenish. That's my experience of the deck. I don't know if people's experience are different, but like, yeah, I have an amazing time casting intuition. I think I would have to revisit how I approach sideboarded games, because once you're in a sideboard game and people have more answers to the card replenish itself, intuition becomes a lot worse, right? So intuition isn't good against graveyard hate and counter spells, because if they counter your replenish, then
you are in fact taking the money out of your deck.
I mean, to like a very, very like small extent, right? Because
it's not really like, so there's,
I'll put it this way.
Cards that matter.
Right. It's like you're taking it out of your deck, but also in the same way that you're doing, like, if you just approached it like you're casting Buried Alive, like, I think you would feel much better about it. Like,
yeah, but you're specifically talking about a situation where your opponent has counterspells and graveyard hate. Like that is a particular situation where taking the stuff out of your deck actually means something.
Right. But if those are 2 different things. So again, I'm already prefacing by saying it's not great, but it's like I would still cast it, right? I wouldn't board out 4 intuitions in those matchups. Like I would have.
Do you know what my most intuition for card in the successful run was against these 4 Dreadnought decks?
Swords Plowshares.
Ancient Tomb.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Man, did I feel powerful! Like just like intuition for Ancient Tomb with a Skycloud Expanse up. I was just like at 6. They were at like 3 mana. I was at 6.
I actually kind of like that. So a lot of people are just like, "Oh, you're like taking these cards out of your deck." It's like, okay, fine. Then just take. Then
how many
take
tombs do you need in play?
Yeah, take the lands out of your deck. Exactly. Like just intuition for Ancient Tomb, and then you get one in hand, which is great, and then 2 in graveyard, which is also great. I think that's like a great example. Like, again, post sideboard, I would like trim 1 or 2 intuition, and I would like in a lot of places play much fewer than 4 attunement. But of course, I wouldn't start with 4 attunement. But
because you never intuition for attunement. That's not a sexy.
I've seen it. Like I don't know what to tell you. I've seen it done.
I would much rather intuition for Frantic Search. I think most of the time.
I mean, again, it's a complex deck. There's a lot of different lines you can take in a lot of different spots. You can't possibly cover it. But again, I don't co-sign taking out Intuition from the main deck, and post sideboard, sure, you can go down to like 1 or 2, maybe 2 or 3. Sphere of Law, I don't have to like, I'm not like gonna go crazy about Sphere of Law. It can be Warmth, it can be Blast, it can be Chill. Those are all seemingly reasonable to me. When I played Mox Diamond, I thought that Mox Diamond was actually the best way to fight red, because you would just
it's faster.
Well, you just be like, okay, get fast Opal Wave or get fast Parallax Tide, and then use the Parallax Tide to set up the rest of your combo.
But clearly, Mox Diamond raises your early game ceiling, but it also makes your deck so much more draw dependent.
That's true.
Right?
I mean,
you have a lot of A plus B equals nothing in
yeah. I mean, it really is just like a nod to the fact that like structurally the deck is like, okay, I'm playing like, I mean, this is where this is like kind of ridiculous, but it's honestly plausible to me, where stuff like playing Mind Stone or whatever Diamond is kind of, you know, in my head. I'm just kind of like, yeah, if your deck is all 4s, then just jumping to 4 one turn earlier is important, especially when those are interactive.
Do you remember when I foolishly said you were the best deck designer in the world?
Yes, yeah.
That was on the back of you having that Mox Diamond Replenish deck. And I think you beat my red deck like 7 games in a row.
I beat your red deck quite often, and it was because, you know, it was because of Mox Diamond, and yeah. During that time I just didn't have red hate in the sideboard.
I didn't think you could win, right? Because I had beaten so many red decks in like my Lobster Con run and with my Solitary Confinement Squee combo, and you had removed it in favor of this Mox Diamond strategy. I'm like, well, that's how I won all my matches. And that's how I beat Aaron, you know? And I was just like, I'm just going to run you over with red. And you won like 7 in a row, 7 out of 10, something like that. Like a really impressive run against a deck that I thought you kind of needed the Solitary Confinement combo to win. And just like, shoot, like maybe this is just the way to build Replenish.
Yeah. And so that actually kind of brings me to my next point about Stifle, which is like, I like Stifle because one of the nice things about Stifle is that if you played Seal Cleansing or you played Chain of Vapor, you're always like setting up your like Parallax combos and stuff. And I much prefer like just being able to cast the Parallax and like just like do the thing, and then your opponent's on hold, right? So if you cast Parallax Tide and you remove 3 counters, you remove 3 lands, they can't play more lands into their Parallax Tide because they're just playing lands to get eaten by that tide. So you get the double Time Walk and you get the triple Stone Rain enabled by Stifle, and like double Time Walk is really, really good for Replenish, and triple Stone Rain is like also really good Replenish. So if you don't threaten that as a possibility with Stifle, that limits your options. So I really like how Stifle is expansive of your options, and it's nice that you can do that with Parallax Wave at all as well, where if your opponent is a creature dependent deck, you put Parallax Wave into play, and then you kind of stymie their ability to develop to the board. So
can I ask you, Lanny, have you played a lot of Replenish against the Doctor, against like a good playtest opponent, and then like played a lot of games just this matchup and then like switched decks?
No, I haven't got a chance to do that because one,
I think that's a valuable thing to do.
It would be a valuable thing to do if I was willing to play any Replenish list that looked like any Replenish list that other people played, and if I wanted to play a Dreadnought list that looked like any Dreadnought list that other people wanted to play, right?
I'm talking about LobsterCon prepreparation, right?
No,
this isn't meetup preparation,
right? No, but this is what I'm saying, which is like the problem, right? Which is just that like, I'm probably not going to play Replenish for a LobsterCon. I think losing to Terrageddon randomly is like makes me want to throw up, so I just like don't want to do that. And I don't think there's a way to make the Terrageddon matchup like a slam dunk for Replenish. I think that you can make it better. Exalted Angel is decent there, but you might not ever see the other side of 4 mana. Mox Diamond is, you know,
is this matchup so bad?
No, it's just so random, right? So like they might just go like Wayfarer, and then you can't play non-basic lands for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it's just like an annoying
until you draw Swords to Plowshares.
They may run you over though, right? Like because they have no such restrictions on their behavior. Yeah. They're just like some Yahoo who's putting 1/1s for 1 in play.
Right. Okay. Let me give the full breakdown. So basically, they have Wayfarer. they have Armageddon, and they have Sylvan Library to find Wayfarers and Armageddons, right?
And Mox.
Well, Mox just, who cares, right?
Well, Mox is great with both Armageddon and Wayfarer.
Right, but those cards alone will win the game for them, right? Because like if they have Wayfarer and 2 lands, you need your 3rd land to function anyways, and like
it's never getting there.
Yeah, so you'll never have your 4th land in play, and but the thing is, if you deal with the Wayfarer, and then you have access to your mana, and you have access to your graveyard, right? Like Terrageddon sometimes doesn't run Graveyard Hate, but if it does, it's like, it's like 1 or 2 copies of Phyrexian Furnace, or maybe 1 Tormod's Crypt, like whatever. This is a deck that like doesn't benefit crazily from Graveyard Hate because it's putting lands into your graveyard that it wants to stay there for Terravor, but whatever, Furnace can let you dance around their lands anyways. But regardless, if they don't have the Wayfarer, or you Plowshares the Wayfarer, they're very, very cold to you just like comboing them. At that point, their second line of defense is to like cast Ray of Revelation targeting Opalescence, which is like pretty good. But if you, of course, have the full combo, then they're cooked. So
you can gain a huge advantage even if they can do that, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you have the full combo, you have infinite mana, so you can probably, do a bunch of stuff such that you end the turn with Mana Leak in hand.
I've been down on Replenish for 3 years. The reason for that is I played it to LobsterCon. I was a successful Replenish player. I played it at like a meetup, a D-Town meetup. I think I went like X1. Then I played it in the PSS, and I only got to play it 1 round because it got banned every other round. And the 1 round I played it, I played against Tom. Tom won the roll and had a double Jackal-Pup draw in game 1, and he got game 1, and we split the sideboard of games. And I hadn't picked up Replenish since. In fact, most of my Replenish pieces were in your possession for a while when you, like, for example, went on a run at the last Sacred Torch, like 1.5K. You played Replenish, right?
Yeah.
So I had forgotten.
I top 8'd and I lost to Terrageddon in the top 8 actually.
I had forgotten, like, it's weird because we talk about which decks are good all the time, right? And Replenish has pretty comfortably been in like the top 3 decks since the banning of land tax.
It's actually since before the banning of land tax.
Yeah.
Like, it was one of the best decks against Parfait, and nobody played it. And I was so frustrated because people were like, "You have to ban land tax." Like, just play Replenish and you'll crush land tax all the time.
So, well, anyway, my point being, I'd forgotten, how good it was and how fun it was to play until this past week. And I am sorry to, I don't know, myself. I don't know who's at home is just like, damn it, my life is ruined. Mike didn't win this meetup, right? I will point out though that Spencer was pared down in the 4th round, so in about 50% of universes, I just would have won the meetup at 4-0. But we don't happen to live in one of those 50% of universes.
Well, some amount of the time, you would have gotten paired with Spencer and then just lost in the same way. And then some amount of time Spencer would have gotten paired against Dreadnought, and then you would have gotten paired down, and then you have the whatever. So the only universe...
No, it would have been the same pinnacle, right? Unless Kaplan beat Spencer.
Exactly. The only universe is where Kaplan beat Spencer, which is not likely to happen considering the matchup dynamics. It's not impossible, but it's not.
And
it's
Spencer's
not favored.
Plot armor was thick.
Right.
Let's be very clear.
Plot armor saves you throughout the multiverse, like in the different strands of the universe.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is true. I think it's all kind of the point of plot armor, right? Like you're sort of borrowing mass, thick, durable mass you're borrowing from other universes.
Right. Absolutely.
From the storytelling of other universes. Where they, somewhere else, they're like, there's probably a universe somewhere where a man named Spencer is playing in a meetup, and he gets paired against Replenish in the last round with his elves deck, and he pulls it out on the basis of having beaten SWB in round 2, right? Like,
yeah,
one of those.
So
you played SWB round 1, right?
Yeah, I did. And
how was your meetup, Lanny? What did you play, and how was your meetup?
Well, I wanted to close the loop on the thing that you're saying about like how productive it would be to test Dreadnought against Replenish, and this is my problem with that question. My first problem is that I probably won't play Replenish. The second problem is that I'm trying not to play Dreadnought. I probably
you want to win LobsterCon. You once described it to me as your Super Bowl.
It is. It's everyone's. It should be everyone's Super Bowl. It's not a Super Bowl just for one of the teams playing, right? But regardless, yes, I want to win LobsterCon, and as a result, I have to give serious consideration.
You want to get third place in LobsterCon. That's the optimal position.
That's the minimum.
To be clear,
that's the minimum
the
position. To be clear, it's the minimum. It's minimum acceptable. So the issue I have with Replenish is that you're just flipping coins against Terrageddon. I'm not into that. And then you.
What if we just came up with a great sideboard strategy for Terrageddon?
I don't think that you. What, you board out all your non-basic lands? Like, what's the plan?
What if you curse totem them? Is that good?
No, it's not.
Okay.
You're curse toteming yourself too in the process.
Curse totem is one of the worst cards ever in Replenish.
lest we forget.
Why did you have this idea, Lanny? Oh my gosh. Literally, like, curse totem's in the sideboard of Sam's deck for the Replenish match.
Right.
Does Sam's deck have any good matchups? Like, I was looking at it, like, I thought about playing it because, like, originally Osip was supposed to play the Replenish deck, right? It was just because Osip had to cancel at the last minute that I played the Replenish deck. I'm like, I'll play Sam's deck. And I'm like, wait a minute. This is going to be a room full of the Doctor. And I know from Sam that the Doctor isn't a good matchup.
No, it's a great matchup now that we put 2 Hidden Gibbons in the main deck. It was always a good matchup. It was just like when we played it, sometimes the Doctor would be like, combo you turn 2 with double protection.
Oh, that they did that to me a bunch
right
this week.
And so, like,
I didn't win those games.
So Sam definitely treats those kind of games as like, well, like
we just don't count them,
well,
even though that's like 40% of the games.
Yeah, exactly.
I played Mono Blue Dreadnought one time ever. When I won, Phil calls me and he goes, "Oh, is it true that you didn't play any game 3s?" And I'm like, I didn't play any turn 5s. Right? Like, A, yes. B, I didn't play a single turn 5. Right? Like,
yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, is like, what deck is like really, I mean, I guess Replenish is like one of the few decks that's like pretty good against turn 2 double protection, because you might have triple answer.
I had triple answer and lost.
Thanks to the concentration. But yeah, but that's the thing, is like, then you can have triple protection. But the problem you had was that one of your answers
was Parallax
Wave and not Seal Cleansing, right? Because the last thing that you got by is Daze, which means that the thing that you actually lost to was not turn 2 combo double protection. Was not even that you had 3 answers, one of them cost 4 mana. It's just that you lost the die roll. Like,
yes, I'm aware.
The die roll is basically like, who gets to be the dealer in blackjack.
But
it's just like I will take that. Thank you.
Kaplan could have just not tried to go off then. Right, that's the thing, right? So I don't win. I only win if he just tries to go off on the draw on turn 2. Then I win for sure, right? He'll
go off on the draw with the hand you described.
Protection. Yeah,
I mean, I guess if one of them's like a Daze, then he'll. Well, okay,
2 days on a foil. Like, okay, that's the Daze counter.
Was this game 1 or game 2? This was
game 1. He's on the play.
Okay. If it's game 1, then you just would have lost to plan A, right? Plan B is to cast Dreadnought on turn 2 with triple protection. Plan A is just mill them, and it always works.
I had to play swords on the initial Vision Charm turn. I couldn't wait for, like, a preferable thing would be to just play a second land and then cast 2 swords in the same turn, instead of like leading it in. But my next land was going to be like, whether I had a plane, I must have had some sort of planes because I did it that turn. But my next scripted plan card was going to be a
Skycloud Expanse.
Skycloud Expanse.
Yeah.
So, like, I have to use the swords now, right? Because my other play is the Ancient Tomb, so that doesn't help me either, right? Like,
yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I have a second.
Yeah. You're on the draw, so it's Island Go, Plains Go, Island Combo, Plowshares, Daze your Plowshares, untap, Skycloud Expanse, upkeep, Plowshares again, foil your Plowshares, pass the turn, Ancient Tomb, Parallax Wave, Daze your Parallax Wave, and I mean.
If I had double planes, I would have made a different play, but I didn't have double planes that was available on that turn.
So losing in that fashion is just not, I mean, it's not really Replenish's fault. I mean, it kind of is because of Skycloud Expanse.
Yeah, because like you have Skycloud Expanse and Ancient Tomb, which don't tap for color.
But it's not like explicitly Replenish's fault. You're just like, okay, well, instead you should have just been playing white.
The Doctor is the best deck because so Replenish also has great draws, but he doesn't have any turn 2.
It doesn't have that
draws, right?
I mean, I guess Replenish can go turn. I mean, Replenish has turn 2 Intuition, turn 3 Frantic Search, Replenish, but that's a 3-card parlay, and it requires 4 times the mana.
Well, in the second color.
yeah.
Right, like the second color, and
it's actually a 4-card parlay because you also have to have a soul land.
Yeah, it's like when you're going off, you're now like complicating this by having a double colorless land in your hand.
Okay.
Right? Like,
anyways,
it's a great deck.
I'm going
to take this, but this is not.
I was saying I'm not just going to jam Replenish against Dr. Surf and Turf because one, I have no interest in playing Replenish, and as a result, I would have to be like, okay, well, like how can I improve like Dr. Surf and Turf and Replenish? Then that goes into 2, which is like, okay, let's assume that we're from the Dreadnought POV. Then I wouldn't be testing next level technology and Replenish as a way to beat Dr. Surf and Turf, because I would just be looking at the population, right? And what the population is doing is closer to what Rich does, is closer to what other Replenish influencers are doing or what people are doing in the Replenish Discord. And at the end of the day, like, I know how to build Replenish. I know that if you put Meddling Mage in your sideboard Replenish, yeah, you're going to win a lot more versus Dreadnought than you would otherwise.
I got annihilated on the merits twice, where I won both games, but it was like I shouldn't have won. You know what I mean? Where like Luis and Itai were drawing 3 and 4 4 cards with accumulated knowledge. Like in one of the games, I was just like, here's what I got, and Luis has just cast the 4th accumulated knowledge, finds the counterspell he needs, and I'm like, you're gonna find the counterspell. He missed, and then he's just like, oh wait, flashback flash of insight for 16, right? So I had to fight 4 accumulated knowledges in the flash of insight that game, right? Like you're not like the Replenish has no counter to like losing to the straight material of the Doctor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can still cheese them. You can still use Mage and Exalted Angel to cheese, but like basically
super high level.
But then the question becomes like, okay, like do you board in 2 Powder Keg against Replenish?
You can also just get dazed. Like that's so I think most of my opponents
post board you're much less likely to. I don't think you would
we're taking out their days. Like they mostly showed me they take out their days, which actually means that I can play more aggressively if I know that.
Right. Which, could be good.
Are we on the no thwart third days club? Is that where we are?
I mean, I would play 3 days in the main of Dreadnought almost no matter what. I think that Days is sort of an excellent card, and it's actually so good that it's like weird that it's the worst card in the deck.
And then what did you? And are you now an advocate of playing multiple accumulated knowledge in the main deck rather than the Hootenanny blue sideboard of accumulated knowledge?
Yeah, but that's just to create space, right? Yeah. So I'm going to make my deck a little bit worse because I have AK instead of Impulse, and like obviously Impulse is
I am down for AK over Impulse. You know how I feel about Impulse. Wait, are there opts in the Doctor right now?
There's 2, yeah.
Yeah, so why don't we cut 2 opts for 2 AK?
Well, because AK costs twice as much as opt, but that is where I found the space, right? So I kept the opts around because like
I think this is totally worth exploring.
Curve considerations, I kept the ops, and okay. I just trimmed the second Flash of Insight. I moved it to the sideboard, and then I put I trimmed down an Impulse. So instead of like 3 or 4 Impulse, I played 2, and then I like cut 1 more card. It might have been the third days, but I can also just pull up my own YouTube video. And pull it from my video, but that's like if you just check out the most recent Dreadnought video that I made, you can find sort of where I would go.
I want to hear how your meetup went. Did you play GAME?
Yes, I played game Grow Mystic Enforcer. Not too much to report. Mystic Enforcer was fine. It wasn't good against SWB. You can't play a 4-mana sorcery card against SWB play was playing Mono Blue Tide. So game 1, game 1 was actually super interesting. We're going back and forth. We're trading resources. Eventually, I'm like in a race situation where like I'm on like, 10 life against SWB's like SWB's like 9. And he's got 2 fairy conclaves and I've got like sort of whatever. And so I put SWB down to 6, and then I have a choice between flashing back Call the Herd to put a second elephant token into play, or casting a Korean Dryad. And I don't like have a blue card in my hand, right? I don't have a cantrip in my hand.
Yeah, so you play the call. Right?
So I play the Call the Herd, but SW might have Powder Keg, but he has 2 Powder Kegs in his graveyard. And then SW played Powder Keg, and then he just kegged away my 2 elephants, and then I removed 1 Fairy Conclave, but I wasn't able to remove the other, and so basically I just lost the race. And then the second game, basically I was mana screwed. The entire game came down to like at some point I cracked a Flooded Strand. And
I assume you sided Mystic Enforcer out.
Yeah, just because it's hard to navigate that around Force Spike. It was actually funny in game 1. I kind of was I was looking for a read, and so I'm about to tap all 4 of my mana for Mystic Enforcer, so I just like turned to Andy and I'm just like, it's 2 Force Spike, right? and Andy's like in the middle of a play, but SWB is like no reaction, and I was like, it's 2 Force Spike, and Andy was like, I don't know what's in SWB's list, and I was just like, oh, I know, I'm just seeing. And then so I cast the Mystic Enforcer and he cast Counterspell on it, and that was the best feeling ever that it did not get Force Spiked. So anyways, I sided out. The next game, basically, I was mana screwed. I had all the goods. I had Winter Orb. I had Sablo's Web. I had, creature. I had just like exciting stuff. And I just didn't counter a Stifle on my Flooded Strand because I was just like, I'm sure I'll draw another island or cantrip into the island. And then I just didn't see my third island, I guess, for the rest of the entire game. Because I was just like so excited. My line of play as soon as I drew the second island was going to be like Gush, Mox Diamond, Duress, Sabo's Web, and then then cast Winter Orb.
The Sabo's Web is such a good card against mono blue.
Yeah, I mean it stops their clock. It's like super whatever, but
everything.
But yeah, instead of that, I just failed to draw land forever. That then happened in the inverse. I flooded out against Black-White Control. So I took my first match loss to Black-White Control ever.
Oh my God. Black-White Control seems like the dream matchup for any kind of Grow-Tog type deck.
Yeah. Any deck that contains a lot of cantrips and mana denial certainly was.
Yeah.
In game 1, he tried to vindicate my Mystic Enforcer. And then I politely explained to him that he couldn't. And then he was like, okay, I'll just Plowshares it. And I was like, Counterspell. And then he was like, okay, I'll just Plowshares it. And I was like, that resolves. And then he just got in with Exalted Angel. I kept drawing lands. Something of that sort happened in game 3. And then I played against Rug Threshold, and then that's like basically a mirror match.
Threshold?
Yeah. That's basically a mirror match, except for I have 6/6s and 10/10s in the form of Mystic Enforcer and Korean Dryad, and they just, have Lightning Bolts and Incinerates.
What cards are in their deck?
It was just Werebear, Nimble Mongoose cantrips, and burn spells.
How do you get to Threshold?
Urza's Bauble cantrips and Fire Ice and burn.
So, I think Song of Blood would be gas.
I mean, you don't have because Song of Blood pumps all your creatures, right?
Yeah.
So the thing about that is that you need to have a lot of creatures in play, and
you also need to have a lot of creatures in your deck, or Song of Blood's just discard a card.
Right. And so as a result, that doesn't really work if you're like the rest of your deck is like, there's just not enough creatures that are playable in the format. And then also, if you don't draw Song of Blood, then your deck is full of creatures that don't give you Threshold. So like, imagine you played every Threshold creature, right? You played Crozen, whatever, like the 2/1, and you played the 1/1 that turns into a 7/7, and you played the Crashing Centaur, the one that gets haste. But they're all like hanging out with each other, but nobody wants to go to the graveyard, so they're all just a bunch of overcosted guys. Well,
that's why.
And then Song of the Blood finally hits. Anyways, those
decks often get Threshold with their white cards, not red cards, right? So,
anyways, regardless, I defeated Rug Threshold 2 games to 1, and then I went and went because I had to grab dinner with Ryan. But so. Sort of uneventful meetup for me. Like I was getting a lot of oohs and ahs when it got announced that I was playing on table 12. I like walked over and the guys were just like, "What are you doing over here? Like what? And I was like, "Listen, we all get mana screwed sometimes."
I mean, SWB went 2-2 in this meetup.
Yeah, I mean, finally, that brings his overall win rate down to like a lofty 90. Yeah, exactly. But I'm still okay. So I mean, that is also compounded with recording of our last podcast. I was about to play the Magic Online Challenge. In my first match, I played against Survival Tin Fins, or Survival Ghoul, which is just buried ghoul, but it has survival to also bury the ghoul.
That's just has that card to. Does that deck also have like Hermit Druid?
No, it just has buried alive and it has survival, and that's how you get a ghoul in the graveyard.
Nobody plays Artie's combo deck. If that deck,
yeah, nobody plays it. And they actually bug fixed it on Magic Online. Artie's deck is the Cephalid breakfast deck that cephalids into Terravor to exile to ghoul. Terravor does count.
Literally looks awesome to me, and I'm confused. People don't. I mean, it looks so fast.
I mean, it sounds like a deck pick waiting deck pick and meetup game waiting to happen. So I lost that. I got mana screwed in game 3, which was super sad. I got turn 2 comboed in game 1, and then I got mana screwed in game 3. So that happened. And then I caught my first ever loss against McLean playing Terrageddon. Like, I just lost to Terrageddon, and it just like basically never happens. And actually, like the last couple iterations of the deck, I was just like, I'm worried about consistency. And as a result, I added 2 sleight of hand to the deck to just like
love sleight of hand.
To just
there's so many decks I want to play. I want to play the City of Traders version of Terrageddon. I mean, I cannot wait to have Abundance in play. It's like every game of pre-modern that I've played, Lifetime, for the last 3 or 4 years, just culminating in me having Abundance in play, right? Like, I can't wait.
I mean, why replenish Opalescence and Parallax Wave when you can replenish Sylvan Library in Abundance?
It is a great question. The answer is, I can also pretend like I designed my own deck by, rather than playing Rithsgrove, playing Treva's Ruins, and then playing like Annul and Hydroblast instead of Pyroblast. But then I think you lose a lot against Goblins because SWB had Pyroclasm. There's no parallel against Goblins to Pyroclasm.
I mean, against Goblins, you just cast Terravor and cast Armageddon and cross your fingers. But
you can also chill them. It's not bad. Not great.
I mean, it's in line with what you're trying to do as a deck, right? Like, you're trying to deny their mana, so chill makes sense. But regardless, I lost to Terrageddon. I kind of can't even remember what happened in the matchup. I just, it was like grindy, and like there were just like weird spots where like I wasn't drawing cantrips, and like I just like my stuff wasn't lining up. So like I said, I'm a little bit frazzled because the last like losses felt like they were due to inconsistency, and I'm not gonna like scapegoat this, like,
you're like, playing a 4-color deck.
I've had a run bad. I've had a run bad. This is a variance downswing. Like, it could just be that, my opponents were a lot more forgiving in the times that I was very successful with Grow-Tog, and it's gotten to a point where even some of the most forgiving matchups like Terrageddon or Black-White Control, like subtle differences in how those matches play out, have made it a lot better. And even I don't know what to make of it, but I think that it's very easy right now for me to conclude. I'm like, okay, well, Grow-Tog just isn't consistent enough of a deck to sort of hang with the guys, hang with the scarier guys of the format. And either that, or maybe like I cut the meddling mages from the main deck, and like I don't think they're like huge in the matchups I lost to, but something about the structure, like I've finally pushed things too far with all the accumulated knowledge, the Mystic Enforcer, the like whatever, going up and down on Armageddons, going up and down on maybe having days or not having days, or having too many counterspells.
Is there a world where you just play blue-green? Is that just not acceptable?
So the world that I think would be interesting is any world in which you don't play Mox Diamond in the deck.
Yeah.
So then that kind of begs the next question, which is like, okay, if you don't play Mox Diamond, do you play Gush? That's kind of like a very...
I don't like where this is going.
Right.
I choose not to look behind this door.
Right. And
I asked.
And so I built a deck. Viewers might recall that didn't play Mox Diamond, didn't play Gush, and was basically a blue-green deck with like lots of instants and some creatures and some counter spells. And that's basically my imagination of what that is. And if you wanted to add Mystic Enforcer to the best attack deck, I would 1,000,000% cosign, because the one deck that the best attack deck struggled against was Black-Green Survival. And so if you just like add Mystic Enforcer, a good number I would say is 3 for no particular reason. It just feels like an intuitive number to add.
I see what you did there.
You could
because you don't have enough 3 through 5 casting cost cards in the best attack deck.
Well, you would have to tweak best attack, because like best attack was designed to.
But Mystic Enforcer is a 3-mana card in that deck.
That is correct. It can be a 3-mana card that you cast off of a Wall of Roots, and then you have Wall of Roots mana on the next turn.
You have like a 1-mana mana leak back in my version.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, I have both, right? Because I have Roots and Sunscape, but yeah, most of the time, best like. SWB and his hubris was like, oh, we don't need these beast attacks. We're just going to play maximum Call of the Herd. And I'm like, look, sorcery and 3/3 is surprisingly relevant downgrades from instant and 4/4. Like GGG is a problem. Like if you just wanted to play Call of Herds and best attack, then you didn't have to play Wall of Roots, because Wall of Roots is giving you enough G to cast best attack. So, there's a bunch of tweaking to go on. And so Mystic Enforcer doesn't align with those goals, which might lead me to think that it should be like 1 main, 2 sideboard or something like that. But, Mystic Enforcer might be better than Decree of Justice. Decree of Justice was always kind of like the weakest threat in the deck, and it was only there because if your opponent was just as grindy as you and you're playing a super long game, making like 10 angels is a good way to close out the game. So
that's not true. That's not the only reason. If you're playing the best attack deck, you are probably a deck toucher. And Decree of Justice is a way to win that is also a deck toucher's delight.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, it just wasn't... I was excited because Decree is instant speed, but it's also like instant speed once you have about 7 mana in play. And if you have like about 7 mana in play, Mystic Enforcer becomes totally fine to cast at sorcery speed. So
at a discount, right? You could double protect.
I mean, there's so much that's kind of exciting there. Is like also like if you're not interested in holding up counter spells for the entire game, which you're not going to be interested in against like mid-range decks that don't really play spells that are exciting to counter, besides, I don't know, Survival of the Fittest and nothing else.
You know what would be great against those mid-range decks, Lanny? Upheaval.
Okay, regardless,
Upheaval.
Going turn 2 Wall of Roots, going turn 2 Wall of Roots into turn 3/3 Mystic Enforcer with Pro Black is actually like totally acceptable, because on turn 4 you can cast Fact or Fiction, and then you will have Threshold, and then you'll be in pretty good shape. They are a Withered Wretch deck, but I assume that you will be able to figure it out from there. So yeah, I would say that if you don't want to play Grow-Tog, which is totally reasonable, I would look at best attack, and then if you think that I'm saying that best attack is better than Grow-Tog, I don't know. I don't think so. A lot of Grow-Tog's advantages come from Gush and Mox Diamond. The only downside is that a lot of the disadvantages from Grow-Tog come from Gush and Mox Diamond. So it's like
I mean, I've seen you just look at. I've never seen someone mull to 5 as much as I've seen you with Grow-Tog. You're just like 2 trips to London. That's your.
Yeah,
and you often win anyway, but like,
that's always been the thing, is like,
start with 2 trips.
I think if you follow my, I am not one of those pet deckers who are going to tell you that their pet deck is the best deck. I've never prescribed Grow-Tog as a thing that you should be doing if your interest is in winning the game. Like, I've never been like, I hear, like, I'm not naming names, but like, there have been some voices out there just being like, this deck is just going to beat everything. Like this deck just wins. You should play this deck because it beats everything and wins. I'll super honest about Grow-Tog. It's like, you're going to win, a solid amount. According to the Dress Crew data matrix, it's like 52%. That's not very good. You'll have some good matchups against some decks. You'll have some tough matchups, but totally reasonable ones against other decks.
I think Grow-Tog is underrated.
I mean, it's like, I don't know. It seems properly rated after my string of like 2 and 4 over the course of my last 6, matches. Against some, I mean, that was the other thing. It's just like once your deck starts losing to Terrageddon, like that's like the zone that I don't want to be in. Like I am higher on Terrageddon than I have in the past because I finally like got some reps in and sort of was like feeling out some of its vibes, but like I still don't want to lose to that deck because like that deck is like a bad deck crusher. It's like if your deck can't answer Call the Herd or Weather Wayfarer, like it doesn't necessarily deserve to be a deck. Like, every deck deserves to be a deck, but it doesn't deserve to be a competitive deck. You can't just be out here losing to Weathered Wayfarer and expect to be able to hang like in a metagame that has so many worse things that can happen to you. So yeah, I think that Grow-Tog is a great deck, but right now I don't really know where I would go with it because some of the pressure it's facing. Like another important thing is that Grow-Tog's stock was always super up because it was like really, really excellent against opposing blue decks, and those included Replenish, Dreadnought, and Tide Control Landstill bucket type decks. And I have noticed that I felt some kind of tension. Either my opponents are getting better, my opponents are building their deck sharper, but I feel like I've lost a lot of my edge in those matchups. Like, specifically, I still think that I'm good against Dreadnought, but honestly, looking at how much stronger Dreadnought is as a deck, I no longer think it's a foregone conclusion.
I played Dreadnought at that 1-1K. I lost 2 matches on the day they were both to you.
Yeah.
Right. So,
but since then,
matchups seem horrible to me.
But since then, I beat the same Grow-Tog pilot twice in my victory run at the side event.
Yeah.
So
also, I didn't know anything. I was an idiot.
Yeah, and you had a bunch of Sabo's Web in your deck.
That is true. I had a bunch of Sabo's Web, and you drew so many meddling mage.
Yeah, I mean, and then you also didn't have like Powder Keg, which is like really good answer to multiple, like,
or Mistress Factory.
Yeah, Mistress Factory
or totally Parallax Tide.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have any of the
Well, you wouldn't use Parallax Tide against Grow-Tog.
I'm just saying I didn't have it. You know what would have been pretty good? Accumulated knowledge, because that might have allowed me to draw the Powder Kegs that weren't in my deck to answer your meddling mages.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we can call it there. Replenish OSIP's version by Michael J. Waiting is embargoed on air. You should just post the deck pick because people are just like dying to hear it.
Yeah, I'll post it. So I probably get 2 deck picks out of it. I'll also have one which was like, this is the deck I played, and then
after you make some changes,
you make the changes, because I do think that if I just
yeet those attunements. Yeah.
If I just had, Frantic Search against Spencer, I would have been in such better shape than not having Frantic Search against his double Tangle Wire.
Yeah, I mean, Rich Import is also a card that's very popular nowadays. It's also a card that your bad matchup or potentially bad matchup Terrageddon is using to fight against you. So there's that. And then yeah, I mean, next week and in future weeks, like I want to dig into some like the nuance of these things, because I feel like a lot of the talk about matchups being unfavored or favored has been kind of like sort of tricky to entangle, and I actually think that the Replenish Terrageddon matchup is like a very good example of that, and is an interesting one where you might draw the conclusion of just like, okay, does that mean that Terrageddon should mulligan to Weather Wayfarer and Replenish should mulligan to Swords to Plowshares and or a deck with 4 basic lands, or a hand with 4 basic, three basic lands?
I'll give you an idea. Maybe Replenish should mulligan to Curse Totem.
yeah, exactly.
Actually, Lanny, I want to address something before I don't know if we're going to break, but I was thinking about this a lot. There is the prospect of us having a pre-modern league in New York, right, which would increase the frequency of us being able to play, which would be great. I want to play more. But the problem is if it's a league, then I'm just going to play spike decks. And like right now, I really want to play like Abundance, and I want to try Artie's deck, and I want to have this whole spread of experiences, and that makes the idea of having the Abundance in play makes me happy just thinking about it, right? Like the idea of trying Artie's deck, which is different than other decks that I can play. I never even got a chance to play Dance Academy, right? Only Osip's played it so far because I was playing Red that night. If it's going to be a league, I'm just going to play Dreadnought and Replenish every week. That's what do you think about that? Does that mean I actually have to care?
I mean, you would gather as much league points such that you would have a very healthy lead, and then towards the end of the league, once you've clinched, you can do whatever, or you can just be a man and try to win with a rogue deck.
Are you mean like the Cavs? The Cavs are on a 3-game skid right now. People are like, oh my God, the Cavs are on a 3-game skid. What does that mean? It means they locked up the MFA regular season and they're just not killing themselves, right? Because why? The Celtics are never going to catch them, right? And so
yes,
they're like, oh no, we had a 3-game skid in the regular season.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I mean, you should be maximizing the amount of joy in your life regardless. And then you have to balance the amount of joy you get from being a champion to the amount of joy you get from being a scientist.
I really want to have a Cephalid, Illusionist and Nomads on Corrin play.
I mean, that deck performed.
I think that deck is awesome.
That deck also performed very well, so you can have your cake and eat it too. This is what we aspire to.
And he's got like all the answers. Like if your opponent has a Tormod's Crypt, he can just Eldamri's Call for the monkey.
Yeah,
it's just a thing you can do. So anyway, I'll probably play that next month. So that's a deck pick coming soon. I was posting on my Instagram like every day for like 3 or 4 weeks. And then I haven't posted very much. I think like the last post I had was just like a 40 card deck that I drafted at Andy's house. But the problem is there's a terminal number of decks I can own. And so I made like a lot of deck picks, and I'm like, I'm running out of cards.
Yeah, once a day is a pretty high rate. So you might just have to find out another place for your content to come from.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm gonna run out. I mean, I do have the Cephalid breakfast deck and versions of Replenish or decks that I can post, but I think we're bumping into the wrong side of how many decks I own.
Yeah. Well, there's no wrong side. You just Cool Stuff Inc. promo code Flores.
That's true. Maybe they'll have Nimble Mongoose back in stock, and I want to try like Billy visited us from the Duress crew, right? Did he play green white? What did he play?
I assume that he was playing Survival Terrageddon.
That's a deck I'm super excited to try. It looks pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a deck that's in development, so it's one you can jump on the brew train and see if there's some applicable science there.
I think I'd play more werebears or fewer werebears. One of the two.
I can tell you from the discussions that I've had or have seen Billy have, the number of werebears has been very dialed in. And I will tell you that fewer is better than more, because Wall of Roots is a lot better than werebear. Sometimes even when you have deck? Sometimes even when you have Threshold. So
you know what card I want to be good in pre-modern, and so like this is on my list of decks I want to try. Stampeding Wildebeests.
Yeah, I mean, of course, except for I'm just gonna stop you right there. If you have a survival and fittest in play, like you should just win the game. And then if you don't have a survival of the fittest in play, then like just having Stampeding Wildebeest isn't going to do anything. Just going to like die to Swords of Plowshares.
You just keep rebuying your Wall of Blossoms.
Yeah, I understand the synergies. This has been Spike Colony. Love Spike Colony.